The next question comes from Chad, who says, practice or exercise tips for ascending and descending legato runs. I am a giant fan of legato playing. I am a legato aficionado. Here are some of the things that I've worked on over the years to really kind of improve this type of playing as far as really developing your skill set with this. The first thing obviously is your fret hand position, all right? Making sure that you don't have the thumb wrapped over the neck like a baseball bat, but you've got the thumb behind the neck to facilitate a good position as far as getting your fingers in place. The other thing is kind of the posture and positioning of your guitar. I actually tend to wear my guitar pretty high when I'm playing with a strap. It's not as cool as Johnny Ramone, way down by the knees, but for me, that's what works. Definitely experiment once again with finding a good, comfortable position for the instrument. The first thing to be really aware of when it comes to legato playing is what we tend to think of as legato as guitar players versus the way that I think of legato. Most people, when you think of legato playing, you think of, okay, I'm going to pick a note and then I'm going to hammer on to get a note that ascends in pitch, or I'm going to pick a note and I'm going to pull off to a note that descends in pitch. So there tends to be this idea that, okay, you pick something first and then the fingers do the job after it. For me, true legato or pure legato is sounding notes without picking anything, which means instead of, picking a note and then sounding notes after it, let's say I was ascending 3 notes on a string, instead of picking this and then hammering the next couple of notes, I like to practice literally hammering every single note that I play. And one of the exercises I use to really develop this is it's what I call the reach around. And no, you filthy animals, it's not that, okay? Here's what I'm going to do. I don't need to use my picking hand to practice this. So I'm going to reach over and muffle out the strings, okay? The reason I do this is that when I'm practicing legato, a lot of times the fingers will bump into adjacent open strings and you get all this noise. This allows you to muffle the strings so that we have no open strings ringing out. The first thing to be able to do is to actually go through one finger at a time and hammer on from nowhere. Okay, literally just smash your fingers onto the string to actually sound each note, okay? You need enough physical strength to actually get the note to sound clearly. Now, I'm intentionally using a dry and kind of awful guitar tone with this stuff. If I was playing with tons of overdrive or compression or effects, a lot of times effects will hide a multitude of sin in your playing. So you want to practice this stuff with a clean and dry and kind of naked guitar tone to really hear if you're actually executing the technique correctly. Once you understand the basic idea of the hammer-on from nowhere and you can actually sound notes just by smashing your finger onto the string, you want to focus on doing various combinations of fingering. So let's say I started with, if I said to the average guitar player, we're going to play a trill between the first 2 fingers. Most people would play a trill by picking a note and then doing hammer-on pull-off, right? Alternating between those notes. This is a fixed trill, and what I mean by that is that I've got this note fixed on that note, and then I'm doing my hammer-on pull-off, all right? I like to practice that same kind of trill, muffling out the strings again, and instead of leaving that first finger where it is and trilling back and forth, I will actually alternate, okay, so that there's only one finger at a time in contact with the string, as opposed to just leaving this finger there. Because if you practice a trill this way, okay, this finger is doing all the work. How much exercising are you doing with that first finger when you do this? Well, none, okay? So we want to make sure that each finger is getting equal attention, okay? And then do that with first and third. Okay, first and pinky, it's a little bit trickier. Second and third, second and pinky, and of course the dreaded third and pinky, okay? So if you can really get a nice clean tone by just hammering on from nowhere, then you can start to, really get a better sense of what legato is supposed to be. You can also do this with combinations of 3 fingers at a time. So let's say I had, in a traditional kind of legato sense, pick a note, hammer on, hammer on. So I'm thinking first, second, third, consecutive half steps, right? pick hammer, hammer. Notice what happens by the time I get to the end of that. All 3 fingers are on the string, right? Well, instead, practice that as 1, 2, 3. Hammer on from nowhere and only let 1 finger at a time contact the string. You could also do 1, 2, 4. 1, 3, 4. And 2, 3, 4. That's a little bit tougher. And then you can play those backwards as pull-off. So once again, a traditional pull-off phrase, if I was doing 3, 2, 1 as a pull-off phrase, most guitar players would start with all 3 fingers planted on the string, pick the first note, pull off to this, pull off to this. All right? That's more of an anchored approach, okay? If you do the hammer-on from nowhere approach, or in this case, the pull-off from nowhere, 3, 2, 1 is just descending 1 finger at a time. And here's the weird thing about this. Technically, these are pull-offs, but they're almost kind of like hammer-ons because I'm not actually hitting this note and then pulling it to the note underneath it. I'm literally hammering, hammering, hammering. It just happens to be descending pitch. Or 4, 2, 1, or 4, 3, 1, or 4, 3, 2. Woof. Okay. Now, once you start to get this stuff together, then you can start to work on, well, what happens if I want to cross strings with this, right? If I wanted to do, let's say 4, 2, 1, and then change strings. 4, 2, 1 is a descending. Once again, most people would play this with a planted finger position, pick this note, and pull off, and then move to the next string, start with a planted finger position, pick this note, and come down. And that's fine, but I like to practice it once again as 4, 2, 1, 4, 2, 1, a single finger at a time. Because this really strengthens not only the accuracy of your fingers, but the ability to sound notes without picking anything. Now, if I was going to do that same thing again and I, bury my guitar with overdrive and effects, now I can really hear, all right, from practicing using just that awful kind of dry, clean tone. When I play this with effects now, it's much, much cleaner because I've put in the work to really hear if I can get those notes to sound clean, okay? Another variation of this that I do is that I will roll up and down these patterns. For example, if I was using that pattern of 4, 2, 1, 4, 2, 1, okay? When I get to the end of that, I will come back up. All right, now, how might most guitar players do this? Maybe pick this note, and then pick this note to get back to the beginning. But with the reach around, okay, you do all individual fingers. Whew, that's pretty tough, okay? Also, don't forget to do this stuff in a rhythmic environment, all right? In other words, let's say I was going back to doing this guy again, the 2-fingered alternating pattern with index and ring. I want to think of that as eighth notes, right? 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and how about triplets? 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet, 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet. How about 16ths? 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E. So I always want to have a rhythmic environment to practice this stuff in. That's how you can kind of measure your progress, is to, set a metronome at a certain speed, do different rhythmic subdivisions with these hammer-on and pull-off patterns, and then gradually start to increase the speed. Now, am I saying never pick again? Of course not, okay? I often will pick the first note of a legato phrase, but if I don't want to, I don't have to. In other words, if I want to just descend a series of notes, I'm not picking anything because I've built up the finger strength to do it. So hopefully you will find that helpful.